All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Logan Cavaliere. I'm the lead game designer and public speaker over at Glass Robot Games. I've got a little slideshow to accompany me in my talk, which I'll also be demonstrating exactly what I'm covering. But I'd like to take a second to talk about what I do in the team that I come from. So, like I said, I'm Logan, and I do games as well as speaking. And you'll see that I mess up both throughout this presentation. So, Glass Robot Games, we're a Long Island-based independent game development team that works well together like a finely tuned machine. Each of us have been working together since we met back in high school with similar goals about making games our career. Now, while I will be giving my talk alone today, please know that our team does a lot in game development spaces with goals to entertain and educate, really. Unfortunately, these worldwide circumstances have been less than ideal for our planned events and more public endeavors. But feel free to keep in touch with us via social media, and I guarantee that we'll have some fun projects to share with all of you. For example, we do work, in addition to now with the EGD Collective, we also work with the IGDA, the International Game Developers Association, and their specific NYC branch. So if you're a part of their Discord, we're actually a satellite channel in that server. So in addition to this specific PowerPoint presentation that I'll be sending in there, I also will be sharing a lot of related resources. So that way, if anybody wants to, just learn more about the topic I'll be covering or any related media, it will be in there, as well as, anywhere else on our social media that you can find us. All right. So last minute note, I would like to say that most of the points made throughout this presentation are my own opinions, collectively formed from personal experiences and a good amount of research that I've done over the years. So anything from jobs that I've had since I was in high school, all the way to game development endeavors that I've worked on with my team at Glass Robot. All right, with all of that aside, I will be talking about crunch and the video game industry today. You might have heard of it, you might have done it yourself at your own job or even school, and you might even be doing it now, which is, spoiler alert, not the best thing for your health and just in general for your productivity. So, crunch, in this sense, is often defined as the act of pushing oneself usually to meet a deadline of sorts. It's the feeling of running on little to no sleep, reaching for that second or third Red Bull, and still painstakingly keeping an eye on the clock to count the minutes left until your next milestone needs to be reached or until you need to run to that class to catch that exam. Trust me, I've been there. College, high school, any kind of schooling. You want to make sure that you're not crunching to study, but if you do, you'll learn how it can be a decent or positive thing as well. So for students, you're crunching when studying for that exam. Oh, that was the Red Bull picture. My bad. But yeah, look, beautiful picture of Red Bull for that example that I just made. But for students, okay, you're crunching when studying for that exam that's coming up by tomorrow by pulling an all-nighter right before. And for developers or working folk in general, you're putting in overtime to meet a deadline for a task that was assigned not too long ago, and you're rushing to get it done. I need to reiterate that crunch isn't exclusive to the video game industry, by the way. Anybody can be a part of it. Anybody can partake in this, I don't want to say frowned upon work practice, but something that, is pretty detrimental to your health and, like I said, productivity. And it's generally seen throughout the video game industry for a few main reasons. So developers are constantly struggling with planning and balancing project timelines, as well as effectively clocking how many hours will translate to how fun a game will be. Unlike a lot of other jobs, there's more to finishing a task or delivering a project than just following instructions and giving a consumer exactly what they're asking. I mean, sure, at the end of the day, you definitely could just follow guides online showing you exactly how to make a game in Unity or Construct 2, but even then, you'll likely come across some seemingly random errors that'll take hours or days or weeks or months to resolve. And even then, you might end up needing to scrap the project altogether because you can't meet your own deadline or the deadline of a producer or publisher that you're working with. So that's assuming you're still following a guide or video tutorial. Never mind the idea that you might want to make the game in your own unique vision, with your own designs or music, or with some cool additional features. But before I trail off too much, I'd like to share a personal experience that I've had with crunch as an independent game developer. I was hired by this one tech-based company as a contractor to gamify their job promotion system. The way to promote within this company and make it to a better job position, one higher up the ladder, or at the very least in a generally better place of payment, compensation, anything of the like, it was simple, but they wanted me to come in and make it feel more bearable and engaging. Because of this specific field that this company was in, it made developing a fun promotion system a lot easier, but it was extremely noticeable how much crunch employees needed to partake in to actually succeed there. It was fairly common and even lightly recommended for people to work 12 or more hours a day, all to make consistent progress with their respective responsibilities. It even got to a point where some employees just received time off for clocking in way more than 40 hours a week. And this kind of compensation was typically given by higher-ups who played it off as a courtesy. I'll admit that while I was employed here, even I crunched to meet some deadlines, but please understand that one, I'm a workaholic, and two, I was hired as a contractor, not a full-time worker and not a part-time position either, something that I was generally there knowing I would only be there for a limited time. And the way that I looked at it, the sooner that I did complete what I was hired to do, the sooner I'd be able to move on, because I was sure that I would not want to start a new contract there or even be hired as a full-time worker. So I've heard stories from friends and even seen with my own eyes that some people just happen to work more effectively under pressure when faced with time-restrictive challenges or feeling like there's no better way to meet a deadline than to just sprint through production. Some find that just crunching works and helps you get the task done better or faster. You can qualify just about every argument with the idea that somebody somewhere is okay with one point or another. But when it comes to crunch, especially in the game industry, underestimating what that can do as a developer or manager can be wildly dangerous. They have plenty of horror stories published about both AAA and indie developers experiencing their shares of crunch. But one that immediately comes to mind and is fairly well known throughout the industry and just, in common game circles. Well, I say common game circles, but I do digress. There's a lot of people that I speak with because their games are pretty popular. Rockstar Games. I'm not going to renounce the developer or anything, but any consumer can look at or play something such as Grand Theft Auto 5 or LA Noire and acknowledge that their massive experience is filled to the brim with content. Well, back in October of 2018, Kotaku had interviewed over 70 employees from Rockstar Games about their time working on Red Dead Redemption 2. To provide some context, Red Dead Redemption 2 is an action-adventure experience with an open world set in a fictionalized representation of the Old West United States. Production of this game began during the development of the original title in the series, and it mainly kicked off in May of 2018. Now, let me level with you for a minute, as best as I can, because again, I am only an indie game developer. I have very limited experience when it comes to the AAA environment. But approximately 8 years for a development studio as big and well known as Rockstar Games, they've likely got the funds to back up that kind of lengthy production cycle, right? Sounds reasonable. Well, based on the interviews that were conducted around the game's release in 2018, no amount of optimal management or production planning could prevent the developers from having to consistently work 50 to 60-hour work weeks. And that's disregarding any of the rumors that you might have heard or any of the side comments you might have seen on that Kotaku article or any related articles that said things such as some employees there were forced, or not, forced, but recommended to work 100-hour work weeks to make sure that the game got done in time. Stuff like that can be discounted by these interviews. So it was described by employees that those working in the cinematics team, the design team, and especially the quality assurance team faced the worst crunch circumstances. This kind of crunch over the course of 8 years resulted in some dreadful experiences for those employees, bringing up damaged relationships, legit mental breakdowns, and even resorting to heavy drinking at work. Now, imagine working on whatever project you're doing right now or doing what job you may be handling with a timeline of a few years, and you still have to work 10 hours a day each week only to barely get the thing done. I, personally, am a well-defined workaholic. I always look to find the bright sides in jobs that I do, and I'll even declare that those circumstances are way too rough, too difficult, because even working multiple full-time jobs, at the very least, you need a break. You need some time to take off, put a day in your calendar to just rest, to relax yourself. So after considering those two examples of crunch and how they can be demonstrated, what their negative impacts are and such, can we really just put the topic down and say that we'll all know how to handle it in the future? You start working at a local to small a local small to mid-sized company, a development studio, and their culture seemingly promotes the idea of working 50 hours a week. Sounds good, right? I know that's a bit of a loaded question, but I'm honestly asking you to ask yourselves, how would you feel about coming into that kind of circumstance? It can be pretty rough to come across a job at an established studio in the industry, after all. So some might understand that taking the fall and working all those hours, all those weeks, all those overtime shifts, technically, to get to keep the job. And it shouldn't be that way, though. I could shout that as loud as possible, and it'd still be lost on deaf ears. Because there's a slew of professional developers out there who just don't manage their time well enough or choose to shirk their responsibilities. And quick transparency time. I happen to fall under that category, minus the professional aspect. Being a workaholic means that I enjoy working. I find it positively fun to balance more and more tasks. I know that for a lot of folks out there, maybe even those of you listening, that you're in a similar boat as I am. So up to this point in the presentation, I do have to apologize really quick. I've been mostly focusing on reading from my tablet, my resources here, and challenging myself as a public speaker, just somebody who wants to, get a point across, really share something about a topic that I not only have a good amount of experience in, I'd like to say, but struggle with on a day-to-day basis in my own personal jobs, with working on games with my team, Glass Robot, and just, throughout my personal daily life. I can show you my calendar right now and tell you how scheduling, free time with a friend is a struggle or a trial in its own right, because I genuinely need to find the space or the time frame. And even then, I have to apologize about this, but like even then, I'll tell people, oh yeah, I can fit you into Sunday afternoon for 2 hours. We can hang out and play games together. Is that okay? Like that shouldn't really be a normalcy, especially among somebody who wants to work in a game development studio made up of friends and close ones. But right now I'd like to challenge myself. And again, I do suffer from the voluntary crunch, choosing to get myself involved with it. But I want to improv the rest of this speech, so I am going to have to say excuse me in the future, in the very near future, if I tend to stutter or if I guess I ramble on a bit. But like I said, any parts of this presentation, my resources, my spreadsheet, I was about to say, but my slide share, that will be on any multitude of social media that you can find for Glass Robot, and we'll be able to just help you learn more about crunch, help you feel a little bit more equipped when handling your respective game development tasks. But I'm going to put this away now, and I'm going to talk to you all, level with you personally, about crunch in the game industry. So crunch doesn't need to be a common practice in the video game industry or any job field for that matter. This is a point that I have felt on a personal level for a long time, even before I had a job, a part-time or full-time job. Just being a student at a local high school where you're struggling with your own respective day-to-day responsibilities and tasks, managing a social life, really just taking it easy and trying to work with your family, live day-to-day, however you do. But you crunch in your everyday activities and responsibilities, rushing from managing multiple clubs, doing all kinds of different schoolwork in a variety of fields such as history, math, literature arts. Those are wildly different subjects that, even in college, we have separate classes and separate majors that are meant to get you more involved in those respective fields, as opposed to something like high school where you're just, focusing on everything, getting all of that stuff brain. And you want to make sure that crunch isn't a common practice you're doing. So as a student, one thing that I found that worked for me a lot when I attended community college or even high school in general is that not only managing a personal calendar can be a very helpful tool, but also just, like I said, taking that step back, being one-on-one with yourself on a personal level and saying, I need to set aside more time to breathe, slow down, and just take inventory of where I'm at with my life, my education, everything. So it's up to you as a developer, leader, student, whatever you may, to effectively balance your time and workload. I know, mind blower, right? Obvious. But you really got to sit back and think about these obvious statements I'm making and say, do you practice this balance though? Do you practice, the idea of crunching or, grinding to get your tasks done with whatever, but still taking the time to again, unwind or just manage your I guess your timeline of events done, so that way you can make sure to deliver whatever it is you need to get done on time. For people studying for a test, are you making sure to take instead of cramming everything and studying on the last day before the test, why not study for a few hours a day, for at least 1 hour a day, or at least 20 minutes? Anything can be better than cramming. And I'm not going to lie, I've crammed throughout like my college and high school years. Heck, I cram right now. I have all these textbooks in front of you because I felt that these are the ones that I recently have looked at and said, I read these a lot. But that's because I go back and I cram myself full of the information that I feel I need at the time. Whereas, oh, maybe if I took the time and day to day set aside an hour to read each one of these, I could probably learn how to develop better in Construct, or I could learn how to be a better level designer, like based off of this Crash Bandicoot files textbook that I found online. I'll also share links on where to get these textbooks in the Discord for the IGDA NYC channel, because they are very helpful, especially the level designer one. I have to just put that aside. Okay. So while I might not be an expert on how to live your life, it can at least attempt, or I can at least attempt, to positively influence the future me and my friends. So I like to think that anybody that Glass Robot presents to, anybody that we make games for, I don't want to look at you guys as just a general demographic, an audience, the consumer field, to say they're just a bunch of numbers. They're just a bunch of they're just a bunch of statistics on our Steam page or on our itch.io page to show me how many people are interested in this one genre of game, or how many people are commenting on our projects and telling us like, hey, I actually retained your experience that you wanted to give me in this game. I like to think of us as friends, me getting to present to you. And even if, this is a one-sided kind of experience, I'd like to think that I'm at least, influencing you a little bit, even if it's not positively, even if it's something more constructive that you have to take a step back yourself and say like, wow, this guy talked about nothing for about 10 or 15 minutes. I'm not honestly sure how long I've been going on for. But I want to say that to the future me, as well as, friends, viewers, everybody looking at me right now, take not only a step back and inventory where you're at with your respective projects, but especially game developers, especially people working in a team. Gauge how everybody's doing. Like, see not only your own progress, but see everybody else's progress for the bigger and smaller pictures. Make sure to take perspective at an accurate rate, to the point where you not only look at each other earnestly and say, hey, by the way, like, the rest of us are working like 20 hours a week on this project that, we're not expected to make much money off of. And you're working 1 hour a week, barely. You're sometimes not even coming into the Discord or our Slack or our GitHub to show like any progress that you've made on the build. But like, obviously I'm not going to tell each team how to run themselves, especially if you are running in a big team. But it's good to take inventory and stuff like that. And at the very least, to give everybody constructive feedback and say like, if you wouldn't mind, maybe we recommend you taking a step back, catching up to whatever else you have to in your life, and then coming back to work with us together. Or help them, like I know that that's such a crazy thing. I can't even believe it. There was one playcrafting event, and playcrafting, for those of you who don't know, they're a wonderful group, much like the EGD Collective, that hosts all kinds of gaming related events, casual, professional, classes, whatever have you, that seek to really improve accessibility throughout the industry and make it so that anybody can say, I want to make games. And, that tangent aside, I went to a playcrafting event a couple of years back, and I remember talking to somebody who was telling me desperately they wanted to get into game development, but they were still a high school student and they had no idea where to start. So obviously I directed them to a slew of resources, one being the Game Career Guide website, the Gamma Sutra website. I'm trying to think. I believe I even just told them like, Game Informer, or just common gaming publishing websites like Kotaku or Polygon. Read the articles that they post there, and then take a deep dive into the developer that they're focusing on in that respective article, or the experience that they're reading about. One thing that actually I have to thank one of my team members for bringing up to me before this presentation started, Supergiant Games, a wonderful developer that's created some incredible experiences like Bastion, Transistor, and recently Hades. I apparently didn't know, but that game itself included a period of time where the developers honestly had to crunch to make sure that it could get delivered on time, get published, and everything of the sort. But the way that they handled it, and I'm sure that all of the designers and quality assurance team, everybody working on that project, agreed earnestly to the experience and said, okay, we'll crunch on this respective task that we have to get done. But then they were given like a mandatory 20, I don't remember, but I know that it was some exorbitant number of days off to like specifically rest. It was not only recommended, I'm pretty sure that that my team members said it was like a mandatory amount of time that they needed to take off to rest. And that is a bit of a healthier way to handle crunch, in my opinion, because when you're crunching on a video game project, for example, you know, you could be mindlessly blowing away at a task or trying to figure out what is specifically wrong with this specific animation build or animation aspect of your build, of your small mobile game. Personal example there. You guys would see more about it on our social media. And you could say, like, I'll tackle it and I'll work on this for literally nonstop until I figure it out. And you'll work for 2 days straight and still not get anywhere. But then take a couple of days off, take however many hours you worked on that build and double that and say, I'm going to take that time to recuperate. My brain needs the rest and so do I physically. And that's a bit of a healthier way of handling crunch. Not recommended. Again, I don't say that crunch is obviously a recommended work practice in general, but I will say that, you know, if you personally choose to workaholic yourself or invest in that kind of development time, make sure to set aside the period or the time frame to just relax, you know, literally devolve. So in case this presentation has gone on for too long, or even if it hasn't taken up that much time, I don't want to overstay my welcome. I know that my screen's in full right now, especially for this presentation. So I hope that this PowerPoint has been like sharing this entire time. That would be the worst if it's just not been. But I want to thank you all very much for your time, and please, from one developer to another, from Glass Robot, your friendly neighborhood developer in Long Island, to you all, please take care of yourselves with or without the need or want to crunch on your respective endeavors. And that, ladies and gentlemen, has been my presentation on crunch and the games industry. Okay, now I am going to figure this out with the rest of you. How do I stop screen sharing? Cool. So now I see that it is just me, but I do see that some people have sent some stuff in the chat. Wow, thank you everybody for saying that you love the setup, or just in general. Awesome presentation. Oh my God, that's so cool of you guys to say. It's not like I actually know any of you, but in general, I will start wrapping this up. Real talk. I have been presenting up here for a bit. My lamp is starting to give me a bit of agita presenting, but I would just like to say again, thank you everybody so much for this opportunity to share my personal experience with crunch and just give a little bit of insight to the rest of you when handling it, or even if you don't know that you're handling it. And I must thank, honestly, even if they're not here, the EGD Collective and the Hop-In System for just giving me the platform to really present to you all. So with that, I've been Logan from Glass Robot Games. Again, you can find us on any multitude of social networks, as well as Discord at Glass Robot Games, Glass Robot, anything of the like. And we're very friendly. One thing that we tote is that as a Glass Robot, we are very transparent and working as a finely tuned machine. So if you ever have any questions, insight, constructive criticism, anything about our projects, my presentations, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll definitely reach out to you. All right, have a good one, everybody.